I'm Ken Farley. I'm the chair of the Division of Geological and Planetary Sciences, and I'd like to welcome you to the dedication of the Linde Robinson Laboratory, the new home of the Ronald and Maxine Linde Center for Global Environmental Science. It's a pleasure to share this important event with such a broad cross-section of the Caltech family, students, faculty, trustees, staff, alumni, associates, and Chair's Council members. Today's program features a series of short remarks by President Chameau, Dr. Ronald Linde, Caltech trustee and lead trustee for the Rocky Mountain Institute, Dr. Sue Woolsey, and Linde Center Director, Dr. Tapio Schneider. Together, we have the pleasure of giving you a sense of this very unusual renovation project and what the future holds for the center now housed in it. We'll conclude the afternoon with a ceremonial ribbon cutting, followed by refreshments and tours of the laboratory. Almost 2 years ago, I welcomed many of you to a wall-breaking event to kick off this renovation project. Much has happened since that time, both within the Linde Center and, as you can see, with the Linde Robinson Laboratory. But it's important to understand that this event is the culmination of a far longer effort. I can recall discussing the creation of a center focusing on global-scale environmental questions, most notably climate change, at one of my first Caltech faculty meetings almost 20 years ago. Of course, it was mostly just dreaming at that time. But with the dedicated efforts of the faculty and with the unflagging encouragement of the Caltech leadership, we were able to make steady progress in realizing the dream. Over the years, we built our distributed strengths into a focused environmental science program, greatly strengthened by hiring new faculty members with a diversity of interests in this general area. And I should say, just as a division chair, one of the things that makes recruiting a lot easier is if you say, someday we're going to have a laboratory, and someday is here. So now we have the two key elements to accelerate progress in this really important field: a strong and dynamic faculty and a home with modern research facilities to house them in to gain the synergy of daily interactions. The laboratory project would not have been a success without the hard work and support of many people. These include the architects, Architectural Resources Group, the general contractor, Del Amo Construction, the sustainability consultant Davis Langdon, which includes Nick Butcher, Cynthia Doyle, and Kumi Gadribagovich, the lab planner, Canon Design, and Amy Korn and Matt Randolph, the landscape architects at Korn Randolph. George Loizos was the daylighting consultant, and unique to this project are the team at Integral Group, including Peter Rumsey and Eric Soliday, the mechanical and plumbing engineers who helped us think through the opportunities to make this renovation a showpiece for sustainable design. I'd also like to recognize former and current chairs of the Trustees Building and Grounds Committee, Steve Onderdonk and Nelson Rising, as well as Caltech's design and construction team, Jim Cowell, Ken Hargraves, Brad Smith, and Bart Hale. The faculty committee to design this building and to work through the challenges presented by the goal of being very environmentally sensitive was chaired by Paul Wenberg and Tapio Schneider, and ably assisted by Division Administrator Aline Baladian. I'd especially like to emphasize the central role that Provost Ed Stolper, formerly the Division Chair of Geological and Planetary Sciences, and Paul Jennings, Provost Emeritus, have played in creating and continuously nurturing this effort over this long time period. So please join me in recognizing Ed and Paul. Of course, Caltech exists in a broader and supportive community. In that regard, I'd like to thank Pasadena Mayor and Mrs. Bogard, Vice Mayor and Councilmember Margaret McAustin, Councilmember Terry Tornick, and Perry Bagayi with the City of Pasadena for being good partners with Caltech. Thanks for making Pasadena such a special place. Before I welcome President Chameau to the podium, I'd like to acknowledge his critical role in moving our global environmental science program forward. He's worked with incredible energy and real personal conviction, both with the faculty and hand in hand with the donors you will hear about today, to bring us to this important day. Jean-Luc?
Thank you, Ken, for the introduction and welcome. And thank you for all of you for being here, our trustees, our faculty, our students, our staff, and all the friends who are here today. Also, again, welcome to Mayor Bogard and Claire Bogard for being here, and the City of Pasadena Council members. You know, I have been looking forward to this myself. Okay, when I came here almost 5.5 years ago now, I first went around Caltech to talk to faculty members, and I met quite a group here in the environmental science and engineering program who really told me that, like Ken said, we started talking about this 20 years ago, 15 years ago. We have been looking at a new facility for years and years and years, and really applied pressure on me to do something about it. Interestingly enough, when I talked to the astronomy and astrophysics faculty, they were telling me we've been waiting for 40 years for a building. So in some way, it feels good today because across the street from here, there is a building called the Cahill Building for Astronomy and Astrophysics, and the astronomers and astrophysicists moved there, and there was a number of them who were behind me. Since they moved, we could do this. Okay, so I feel very good, and I feel good for other reasons I will discuss in a few minutes. I feel very good because it is a very important program. It is a program that is, I think, we can have significant impact on the country and in the world, dealing with very critical issues that we are facing worldwide. And also, it's an exciting success, I believe, because it reflects dramatically the commitment that Caltech has made to being an energy efficient and sustainable campus. The building, at the time called Robinson Hall, dates back to 1932, and it was in fact the original home for Caltech's astronomy department, and in part it was housing a telescope, a solar telescope, which is still here, and has become a major part of the new facility. And when we envisioned the rehabilitation of the building and trying to preserve its historic capabilities and characteristics, but at the same time, since it was going to house the environmental science and engineering program, to make it a very special building, again, in terms of the environmental practices and energy practices. And in fact, we were very fortunate to receive early advice from the Rocky Mountain Institute in exploring those ideas and the possibilities. And I believe that ultimately what we have behind us, and when you have a chance to visit, I think you will see it's a great union between nature and science. But it happened because of large number of people, and Ken already mentioned some of them, but now it's time to recognize a few others. And I would like to recognize and thank Ron and Maxine Linde for their gift, their commitment to Caltech, the endowment that they provided to endow the Linde Environmental Science and Engineering, the Global Environmental Science program at Caltech. And that it is what helped us, was the catalyst in making this possible and planning the renovation of this building. Ron and Maxine have had a long-standing relationship with Caltech, starting with a master's degree, a PhD here at Caltech, and being a very active member of the Board of Trustees since 1989, and currently being the Vice Chair of the Board. And I can tell you, I worked very closely with Ron on many issues. Ron gives 150%, 200% of his time and energy to Caltech, and Maxine gives even more. So it is really a team effort, and they have made significant investment into Caltech over a number of years. They've been very, very generous to the Institute, and this is, I believe, something that we are thankful for, and we'll be thankful for many years. So thank you to Ron and Maxine Linde. I would say something personal here. Ron and Maxine are very special to my wife, Carol, and me, because they were among the first few people we met when we were considering coming to Caltech. And Carol will always remember Maxine taking Carol of a tour of Pasadena and Caltech in those very early days. So they're very special. Now, the program here, in addition to the research which will be conducted, will have a long-lasting impact because of the education. Caltech is a research-driven environment, but we should not forget that the most important product is the graduates who study here, and you will hear a little bit more about the education, the research part later from Dr. Tapio Schneider, who is here, who is the director of the center, and he will join me here in a few minutes. But also, in addition to acknowledging Tapio, I would also like to acknowledge Professor Paul Weinberg. Where is Paul? Paul is just behind. Paul, because he was the first director of the center and was very involved in the early days when we were planning the building. So it has been a team effort between Paul and Tapio, Ken and Ed Stolper and many others on the Caltech side, on the faculty side. I also would like to mention that in addition to the building, Ron Linde also provided something very important to the facility. There is a magnificent piece of art here on this side, the building, which is, I think, the west side, if I remember well. The east side. East side, north, south, east. Okay. And I think tonight, for those of you who will be with Ron tonight, he's going to discuss what is behind the piece of art, because I think it's if you take the time to go and explore, you will see that it does celebrate the Caltech history. I think it does capture in many ways the history of this building, and there are a number of varying perceptions for the astute observer. Now, I also would like to thank Foster and Coco Steinbach for their many contributions over the past few years to the center and to the laboratory and the facilities. When we were in early stages of planning the facility, Foster came to me one evening. I think we were having a dinner at the Athenaeum, and said, you have really the intent of doing something special here, but are you sure that you have the appropriate resources for that, given what you would like to achieve? When somebody asks a university president, do you have enough resources? I love the question. And we had a very good discussion, and Foster and Coco are people who are extremely committed to doing the right things when it comes to the environment, it comes to the future of this country and the world. And their financial support was really instrumental in achieving what we have achieved here. You will hear likely more from Tapio and others, but this building, this renovated building, is going to receive a LEED Platinum ranking in terms of its energy efficiency. It has some exciting features like taking advantage of that shaft that we have to store cool water and use it to cool the building during the day. It is, if you can go to the second basement and you can get light from the sun coming from the telescope, and on and on and on. It's a great, there are lots of exciting features. And it is, I'm told that we are confirmed, it is the lowest energy physical science research laboratory in a country. And when you visit the building, if you look at the kind of laboratory intense, equipment intense facilities we have it there, it is quite an accomplishment. And this would not have been possible without Foster and Coco Steinbach. So thank you very much. She will be introduced a little bit later, but I would like to acknowledge also Dr. Sue Woolsey, who's here, and she will share a little bit more about the greening aspect of this program, because Sue is in fact on the board of the Rocky Mountain Institute and helped us in a process, and I think you will hear more about that part. And last but certainly not least, I would like also to acknowledge Charlie Trimble. Where is Charlie? And Charlie was chaired the advisory council, the chair's council of the division, and as well as Ted Jenkins, I think Ted is over there, also been involved, and they were instrumental also in helping with the process. And they also worked, and Priscilla McClure, who is here today from the Associates, the president of the board of the Associate, they worked, and Charlie and Priscilla and the Caltech Associates also made a significant gift which will enhance the teaching and learning within the facility. So, in closing, I would like to say that it is a very important time for the Division of Geology and Planetary Science, the Division of Engineering and Applied Science, the Environmental Science and Engineering program at Caltech. I think it's positioning us in a very good position, and I am myself extremely pleased of where we are in terms of the program and in terms of being able to dedicate this facility today. And I thank all of you, and Ron and Maxine and Foster and Coco, I thank all of you for all the things that you have done in making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Louis. Actually, hearing you, I was thinking about yielding my time to you so you could keep talking with all those nice things you were saying. As I came up from the board meeting to the site here, a number of people were commenting about how it's so fortunate that the rain went away and the weather changed, and it reminded me of that old quip that often misattributed to Mark Twain, but the quip is, everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. And actually, Caltech is doing something about it, and is going to be doing a lot more about it in this laboratory right in front of you. As you've already heard, this really represents the glorious culmination of the concerted efforts of a lot of people at Caltech and the terrific team that Caltech assembled. Many of them have been named. There's some yet who have not been named, but it's a great culmination of the effort. But it might be equally appropriate to think of it as a glorious beginning to the challenges that face us, particularly within global environmental science. The building itself really represents a marvelous accomplishment in terms of achieving excellent form, terrific functionality, and setting new standards of achievement in sustainability and innovative historic preservation. The challenges that face us, you'll be hearing more about today and at other times, and actually, our excellent development department might even tell you more, those lucky ones of you that they approach. But a lot of progress has already been made, both within the Global Environmental Science Center and the Thor Center. It's also housed within, and thank you again, Foster and Coco, for you're making that possible. I've been asked to comment briefly on the whole situation, event, in a broader perspective from a donor standpoint, with the implied emphasis on briefly. But actually, I can be uncharacteristically brief because the perspective is clear. When Maxine and I look to a potential philanthropic investment, we look, first of all, what's the money going to be used for? There are always more good causes than money to go around, and so you look at what's that going to be used for. That's a necessary question, but it's not sufficient. We have to look beyond that. Who's going to be spending the money? What's their track record, their credibility? What are the chances of success, however success is defined in the particular case? And then if successful, what is the impact going to be? And then looking beyond that, the impact of the project, whatever it is, may be great. But on the other hand, how necessary are our funds? If other funds are readily available and we're just substituting our money for someone else's money, then the impact of the project may be great, but the impact of our investment isn't very great. And so we look at that. And then ultimately, what we have to look at involves leverage in the broad sense of the word, not just financial, but broadly speaking. And it boils down to what ultimately is the impact achieved per dollar of our money invested. And when you look at it from that standpoint, and you consider Caltech, and you consider the Global Environmental Science Program, what we have here is really a perfect storm of opportunity. As I mentioned at the wall breaking, and it was mentioned briefly here today, particularly by Jean-Loup, there's really no more important scientific problem facing the world today than global climate change. And as I also mentioned at the wall breaking, there's no better place than Caltech to be addressing that complex problem or set of interrelated problems is a better way to put it. And I discussed some of those reasons. Beyond that, I must say that we have come to expect Caltech to exceed our expectations. Now, I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but it's actually true, and you have only to look at what's been accomplished with the rebirth of Robinson Laboratory to have a prime example of that occurring. Beyond that, looking at Caltech and its people, I have to hearken back to something that Jean-Loup said recently. He said that he's often asked what's Caltech's secret to success. And he said the answer's simple. It's the extraordinary students, faculty, and staff, and their relentless pursuit of excellence that makes possible the game-changing innovations for which Caltech is known. Now, Jean-Loup, that's almost as good a statement as Maxine and I could have come up with. We would change one word, only one word. It's okay. It's okay. You don't know what the word is yet, but what we would change is we would change the word staff to administration, because administration, of course, includes staff. But it also includes our extraordinary executive leadership, and to Maxine and me, that's an absolutely key element in making all of this possible. When you think of it from the financial aspects, many of you already know, some of you don't know, that recently, not quite 2 months ago, Caltech issued $350 million of 100-year bonds at the lowest interest rate ever achieved for so-called century bonds in U.S. history. Now, the first question, so that's no payments of principal, interest only for 100 years. So if Caltech can do that, why does it need our money? And the more obvious answer is that for Caltech to maintain and enhance its preeminence, it needs a lot more than $350 million. But going beyond that, without a track record of a very strong donor support, and without the strong anticipation of that support continuing, Caltech couldn't have issued those bonds. Not only at that rate, it couldn't have issued those bonds at all. So that's where some of the leverage comes in. But beyond that, you have the leverage of the demonstrated commitment that Caltech has to global environmental science, as exemplified now by the laboratory, Global Environmental Science Center, the Terrestrial Hazard Observation and Reporting Center, which I referred to as THOR. Those very tangible demonstrations then allow Caltech not only to have a vehicle for further necessary donations, investments, but also to demonstrate to students, faculty, and potential students and potential faculty, and to be able to retain those that we have, and to be able to obtain vital project support, and to be able to do top-notch, forefront research with proper facilities and long-term dedication being demonstrated. It makes all of those things possible, and that's where some of the other leverage comes in. So I would say, going back to the comments that I made 2 years ago at the wall breaking, where I said that if anybody is contemplating a philanthropic investment that will have impact not only on an individual institution like Caltech, but on the nation and on the world, there's no better place than right here and no better time than right now. But that was 2 years ago. However, the window of opportunity is still open with what needs to be accomplished. We have great momentum, and so those who wish to participate in this endeavor take advantage of the perfect storm, that window of opportunity. You still have time. Maxine and I want to thank all of you, both here and those who aren't here, who helped financially, intellectually, with hard work, perseverance, ingenuity. You've been thanked by Ken and Jean-Loup, and you'll be thanked by others, but we want to add our thanks. Jean-Loup mentioned that I was going to make some comments tonight about the sculpture, but since I have the floor, I'll do it right now. It's a little bit of history there. One day, I got a phone call. I answered the phone, and And, oh, hi, Ron. This is Dean Curry. I want to thank you and Maxine for your lead gift, but what I really want to do is ask you to design a science-based sculpture for us. So I said, okay, I'll think about it, and gave it some thought, and make a long story short, I went through the Caltech art committee, etc. Everybody wanted to have a voice, but they said, yeah, this is great, this is fine. And so Maxine and I were out on campus and looking, and it's at the East Courtyard, and it is East. I have the same problem you do, but Maxine trained me and said it's East today. So we were out there and discussing some of the technical aspects with Brad Smith and Paul Wenberg and Tapio Schneider were there and came by and said, oh, that's great, it's going to be a great sculpture. But what we really wanted is something with a water element. So Maxine's answer, but I fortunately beat her to it. She was going to say, then you should hire somebody who's a water element sculptor, and that'll be great. But I said I'd think about it. And actually, it evolved, and we now have a sculpture which is called Perception. Perception because perception is so fundamental to the advancement of science and technology, and it's a capability that Caltech people really excel in. And the sculpture is constructed, the upper part is constructed out of 32 rods to reference the 1932 construction of Robinson Laboratory. And it's formed into 8 hexahedra, representing the outer one, which is a rhombohedron and has other significance, represents Caltech, and the 7 internal ones being the 6 academic divisions plus the JPL division. And there are various other references. I won't go through it all because it's on a plaque on a wall, at least a lot of them. But just to give you an example, because what I'm leading to is I'm going to announce a small contest. But there are things like, for example, the tilt of the sculpture is at 23.4 degrees is equal to the current tilt of the Earth's axis of rotation. The edges of the outer rhombohedron are equal to exactly 1/10,000,000th of the diameter of the Earth along that axis, and there are various other things. So, we ran out of space on the plaque, and so not everything is mentioned. But there is one allusion, an allusion with an A rather than an I, although there are many allusions with an I in there too, matches a set of clues. It's a statement of clues. And we are going to allow, the prize will be, of course, bragging rights, but also $1,000. We're going to allow 1 year for the right answer to emerge. And if it doesn't emerge within a year, then the money will go to Caltech anyway to be added to the Global Environmental Science Endowment. And it'll be publicized. We're going to rely on Caltech's exceptional administration to properly publicize the contest, which will be open to any member of the Caltech community. So at this point, I'm going to ask Jean-Loup to come back up here and join me up here. And I have 3 envelopes here, and seemingly identical envelopes. Don't have to be nervous. I'm not going to make you choose one. You're going to get to have all three. Okay, so first, knowing what's most important to you, first is the check for the $1,000 in there. Okay. Second one, I'm going to open and read briefly because it's the statement of clues, and it's only because there are other allusions there, it's only one that matches the statement of clues that wins the contest. The first person to come up with it, or a group of people working together. And I warn you, it's not simple. I didn't want, before I finished speaking, to have 900 students coming up with the answer. On the other hand, I wanted to make it easy enough that even the faculty has a shot at it.
But not the president.
Oh, yes, actually. I was going to wish you good luck. And there's an email. It's going to be perceptionsolution@caltech.edu. And so if you have your BlackBerry and you come up with a solution, you can beat everybody else by the time you get back to your chair. So anyhow, very quickly, the statement of clues. History and mystery, a number of clues for a test in perception. If Sherlock Holmes, the fictional master of perception, had been a member of the Caltech community, he would not have needed a dozen clues to discover the illusion. At the time of discovery, he characteristically would have exclaimed, "Elementary, my dear Watson." Science has progressed enormously since Robinson Laboratory was built. Now the Global Environmental Science Initiative will provide a rare opportunity for Caltech's divisions working in concert and in parallel to address an impending crisis that faces our planet. That's the statement of clues, everything you need to solve the puzzle. So here you have first crack at it.
Thank you.
And the third envelope. Now, very so. I know you've been here long enough to be familiar with the Caltech Honor Code. In fact, you even mentioned it at the board meeting today. Nevertheless, this envelope is sealed. And this, as clearly labeled, may only be opened by Mary Webster, the keeper of all Caltech secrets. So I'm entrusting this to you to give to Mary, and with that, I will yield the floor.
So people that are unfamiliar with universities often ask me, what do trustees do? And I think you just saw what trustees do. They do a lot, at least Caltech trustees do. Thank you very much, Ron, for your support of our program and for Caltech in general. It really makes a difference to all of us. You brought up this point about money being, one source of money being exchanged for another. And I just want to give a faculty perspective. Of course, the faculty think that Caltech is great because of the faculty, and that's at least partly true. But one of the things that really sets us apart, and being a division chair, I see this in a way that many individual faculty probably do not, is the availability of resources. And especially over the last few years, when most of our competitors have been running to try to stay in place, and many of them not even able to do that, we've been able to move forward. And it's thanks to the generosity of people like Ron and Maxine Linde. So thank you very much. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sue Woolsey. Sue has worked for many years at the boundary of nonprofit research, government policy, and the private sector, focusing both on corporate governance and on meaningful communications. And as Jean-Loup mentioned, she is a member of the board of the Rocky Mountain Institute, Rocky Mountain Institute played a role in the early stages of the development of ideas for this building. And one of the interesting things that came out of the discussions with the Rocky Mountain Institute is the engagement of the faculty in trying to make this an extraordinarily energy efficient building. And this is not necessarily what faculty ordinarily want to do. Faculty want to get on with their business. And this engagement has become very deep. And one of the things I will challenge you to do when you're having refreshments is ask any of the faculty members who are in this building about the green features, and they all know the nitty-gritty details of how everything works in there, both in terms of the general features of the building and also in terms of what they did to try to reduce their energy footprint. And so this is a very dedicated group going forward, and I think we also should recognize that it's converting people like that that will move this effort forward. So, Dr. Woolsey, thank you very much for joining us, and she's going to tell us about the role that the Rocky Mountain Institute has played.
Thanks, Ken. Ron, now I understand why you stayed up here. It's really kind of fun to see all these people. It's amazing. I had no idea. Many years ago, I was a graduate student in psychology at Harvard, and by great good luck, met the father of one of my colleagues. His name was Richard Land, and he had just invented the Polaroid land camera. He had a saying, which I thought was astonishing at the time and now realize is absolutely true, and that is, never undertake a project unless it's very important and nearly impossible. This building is both very important and it was nearly impossible. I have the very good luck to be a trustee both here and at Rocky Mountain Institute. They have spent 30 years working on energy efficiency and attempting to do that in ways that make problems bigger and more complicated so that you can figure out what degrees of freedom you've got. Caltech and RMI were a great match at the beginning of this because Caltech had, and still has, and will forever have, the best engineering and technical talent on the globe. And Rocky Mountain Institute brought another perspective which enabled the team working together to add new kinds of thoughts and new kinds of systems. One of the ideas they have is the bigger the problem, the more degrees of freedom. If it seems too hard, expand it. And you can see as you tour this building that many of the technical constraints, because of the historic nature of the building, looked really hard to overcome. But in fact, the combination of this technical genius and the human nature aspects of how you figure out the human systems really worked to make this a very interesting and very unusual building. It is, in fact, the best and most energy efficient laboratory building in the United States, and probably will be until we build the next one. The main thing that I think doesn't happen often enough, and which is clearly happening here, Ken mentioned it, and that is the combination of the technical expertise and the human systems understanding. And for example, the question was, how do you cut down the energy use of these massive and extremely complicated pieces of equipment? And the answer was, the scientists talked to the technical officers at the manufacturers and asked them to do it. And it also, and it worked. And the equipment in here is much less energy consuming than most, so it will be a much cheaper building to run, and it'll enable us to have more resources for elsewhere. So I would like to also provide thanks to the Lindes, which was, your gift has been inspirational to all of us, to Coco and Foster for your continuing focus and support for going the next step in terms of figuring out how to green things and how to make them important. and to the faculty, because this is a building which is going to continue teaching and interacting with the people who are in it. Many LEED buildings are very nice, but they're quite static. This is not a static building. And I think it will enable the students at Caltech to really get a better grasp and a more full understanding of how things are dynamically changing, and the built environment can be a help to that. So thank you very much. And thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much for those remarks, Sue. Now I'd like to introduce Tapio Schneider, who's the Frank Galloon Professor. Tapio is the director of the Linde Center, and I should be, maybe I should explain for people that don't know the distinction. We have the Linde Robinson Laboratory, which is the physical structure here, and we also have the Linde Center, which is an endowed research center for the study of global environmental science. So Tapio is the second director of the center, and he's following on the heels of Paul Wenberg. So Tapio.
Thanks, Ken, and thanks everyone for coming. So in the Linde Robinson Laboratory, perhaps more than in any other building, the past is not only present, it tells the story of our ancestors' astronomical achievements, quite literally astronomical achievements. In this building, we also use the past creatively. We use the past to point the way towards a sustainable future, sustainable design future. And so it is with the science in this building. We are building on past achievements at Caltech to chart the way toward a sustainable future. Sam Epstein, as one example, was a professor here in the 1940s. He figured out the way to use tiny traces of chemical elements in carbonate shells to figure out what they tell us about the temperature of the ocean in the past. Later, this led to revolutions in our understanding of the climate system, and those who were at the mini-symposium heard Jess Atkins talk about some of those. One recognition was that climate is not a sluggish, slow system that gradually changes over millennia. It's a very vigorously dynamic system that can change within decades. Those kind of changes we do not understand. My colleagues Jess Atkins and John Eiler are among the Linde Center scientists who continue to innovate new chemical techniques for reconstructing climates of the past. Their insights about past climates and past climate changes are key for us to understand what the future may hold in stock. Another example, the Caltech professor Ari Hargen-Smit in the 1940s and 50s was the first to link urban air pollution to tailpipe emissions by automobiles. His work led to the Clean Air Act. His work led to the establishment of the California Air Resources Board, whose first chairman he was, and ultimately led to cleaner air for all of us here in Southern California. Continuing along the path set by Ari Hargen-Smit, Michio Okamura, Rick Flagan, John Seinfeld, who spoke earlier today, and Paul Wenberg are among my colleagues who continue to study how air pollution forms, how we can devise strategies to reduce it further. And what is new, they now study also how air pollution affects climate. And again, John Seinfeld talked about that earlier today. It is not just a matter for us regional, the air we breathe, but air pollution has become a global concern that affects the climate worldwide. It affects the properties of clouds, and clouds are the biggest known unknown in the climate system. We do not understand how clouds respond to climate changes. And this gap in our understanding is the reason for uncertainties in climate change projections. We want to reduce such uncertainties, and we want to fill the gaps in our understanding of the climate system right here at the Linde Center. These are just a few examples from the research portfolio at the Linde Center. What unites us Linde Center scientists, in addition to the relentless focus on excellence that Ron Linde mentioned, which is what's true for all of Caltech, what unites us is that we want to answer the big questions in the global environmental sciences. And answering those questions and finding solutions to the world's environmental problems, This requires a collaboration that's very unusual. We need to have environmental physicists, such as myself, working with chemists, with biologists, ultimately with engineers to come up with solutions for those problems. And that's not something that usually happens on university campuses, or it does not happen easily. The Linde Center is designed to facilitate this interaction, and we have moved in here in parts a few months ago, and it's already making a difference for our research. These interactions are already happening much more easily than they did before. With the Linde Robinson Laboratory, we therefore have a locus for this collaboration, for such interactions, and of course, what others have mentioned, what is important for us, we have the cutting-edge laboratories to remain at the forefront of research. In the coming years, we at the Linde Center, we want to repay the investment our supporters, such as Ron and Maxine Linde, Foster and Coco Steinbeck, the associates, Charlie Trimble, and many others have made. We want to repay those investments in the currency of discoveries that last and make an impact on the world. So I thank all of you who have entrusted us with that responsibility. Thank you for coming.
Tapio, Jean-Loup, Ron, Maxine, would you like to join me up here for the main event?
Do we share this?
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
No.
They figured you weren't big enough to have one yourself. Now, where do we stand?
Just looking right there. Great. You more like that? Big smile. Thank you very much. Okay. And now we're going to invite you.
Please do. Now we have Foster and Coco Steinbeck. Please join us.
I will join you on this side. And you can cut.
Okay, we'll go in the middle.
Oh, I don't get a scissors, huh?
We share.
And we're also inviting Priscilla and Charlie.
I think we're taking a photograph first.
They're going to stand behind.
Okay, and Priscilla McClure representing the associates, and Charlie Trimble.
Okay, and then one more photo with the whole group on there. Yes, and then you can just wait one. And then a photo with all.
I don't know how.
Okay, looking over this way. Smiles. One nice more. Okay.
Okay, and then
Go ahead.
Do we actually cut this? I thought you could save it for another opening. Okay, ready?
The laboratory is now open.
put your weapon down.
So thanks very much. At this point, what we'll do is for people that have a flower of some sort on their name tag, if you join us up here for a tour of the lab. And for the rest of you guests, we have refreshments in the courtyard that has the sculpture that Ron referred to. So thank you very much for joining us.